What's going on YouTube? Or Storm here, coming at you guys with a video today. Today I'll be bringing you guys an updated list from my Zefras. I know this isn't like the ideal thing. I know you guys like to see all the cards on the table, but I have been picking up other things and other decks, and I'm mainly been getting my Mech Invoked deck ready for my next regionals. That's the main reason why I haven't updated Zefra, because there's a few cards I really needed to pick up to have the deck ready. So I hope you guys can stick around. Also, we'll note that Red Dead 2 does come out on Friday, and I do plan to stream some of the gameplay of the game. So if you guys are interested in that, don't worry. I do hoping to get back on the wagon as far as actual stream content. Nevertheless, I hope you guys do enjoy this deck profile, and I do plan to also have a Dinosaur Thunder Dragon deck profile coming this week as well. So with all that out of the way, I'll go ahead and bring you guys the deck. So let's start just before the minute you look at this list, you're like, Aura, what are you doing? You're playing 45 cards, and you would be correct on that. The biggest thing with a deck like Zefra, and if you've ever, the deck's power plays are also tied to Garnets to a certain extent. Cards like Mare and maybe Destrudo to a lesser extent, but in this particular build, you have so many cards that you really just don't want to draw. You have Time Gazer, you have Mare, you have Driver, you have Ibly. Although to be fair, Ibly comes out when you do go second. But the point is that you have a lot of cards that say that you don't really necessarily want to draw. And that's kind of one of the reasons why mathematically it makes sense. Because if you're playing 40 cards, but you also have 4 Garnets, there's a pretty damn high percentage of you drawing them. Even with just 3 Garnets, you have about a 33% chance to open a Garnet if you play 3 of them in a 40 card deck. Now imagine bump that up to 4 and kind of multiply that. So that's the main reason it's such a high card count. Zefras also have so many consistent search options that you can kind of afford to play more cards as well. The deck is pretty damn consistent. There's so many cards that say add any Zefra monster that you can pretty much negotiate the card count up from 40 pretty consistently and easily, in my opinion. So that's the reason why the card count's so high. And we'll go ahead and get to the rest of the deck profile. So first off, we have 3 copies of Zefra. Zefra is your best monster, your primary play starter, and its monster effect really doesn't matter. The main thing you're going to be using for it's the pendulum effect, which allows you to slap any Zefra monster straight from your deck into your extra deck, and then its scale will change to whatever you put. Not only unlike the rest of the Zefra lineup, it doesn't lock you into non-Zefra or whatever archetype they're from. So that's a really big thing. And on top of that, being able to instantly set up your counter trap, Divine Strike, and having a Nui that can then be pendulum summoned is pretty darn nice. You want to see this all the time. That's why you max out on 3. Yes, it can be, you don't want to see it ever at multiples once you resolve it, but one of the things I'll usually do with it actually is you can also put it in the extra deck in Electromite after you've resolved one, which can prevent you from, dead drawing them as well. So overall, I feel like it's a 3 of, and I would always max out on it. For the rest of the Zefra lineup, we have 2 of our Spell and Trap Searcher here, Secret. Zefra Nui has always been one of the better cards in the archetype, but it's kind of a weird paradox with it in that it's not a card you always want to have in your hand. You want to put it in the extra deck with your Zefra. So that's one of the reasons why I've always ran 2 as opposed to 3. I know 3 is kind of seems like a good number because it is your primary search card, but you really only need 1 in the rotation. And once you have 1 in the rotation, it typically summoning it every turn gets the job done. As far as the other monsters, we have 1 Saiton, 1 Thubin, and 1 Windy. This is the same ratio Zefra-wise that I ran in my build that I played in the national side events. Windy is one of the best Zefra monsters because she can fetch back any of them from the extra deck, which is by normal summon or pendulum summon, which is really good. Saiton and Thubin have great levels for your level 7 synchro plays, as well as being able to both bait out things. Saiton can pop set cards, Thubin pops face-ups, which is really good, and it combos really well with your Providence's Grave effect. And I do still run 3 Treasure. Treasure is one of the most important cards. What I like about it is it puts itself in the bottom of the extra deck, so if you do have a high scale, such as Chronograph or, one of these guys in your pendulum zone, it constantly gives you a monster that can be recurred to your extra deck. Whenever it's pendulum summoned, it will turn one of these guys into a tuner, but it'll go to the bottom of the deck when it leaves the field, which means as long as you activate one of these effects, you'll have a monster to put in your extra deck with Zefra, and that's really, really good. I run 3 because a lot of times you'll have 1 in scale, and one you want to pendulum summon, and you want to see it all the time because it's one of your primary, one of the best play stars for the deck. Then for some of the generic pendulum, I have one Dark Worm and one Gate Zero. This isn't quite like Pendulum Magicians where it's actually a really solid normal summon. In this particular deck, once you have one, it's typically all you really need because you don't really need to constantly put free fodder on the board, but it starts your plays, but it's not something that you constantly need to get moving. Same thing with Gate Zero. It is a really important card because unlike, again, most of the Zefra lineup, it doesn't lock you into it doesn't have a scale restriction, so you can pendulum summon your Chronograph, for example, which is really good. And that's one of the reasons in here. Also combos well with Meteor Burst for obvious reasons. Then 3 copies of Chronograph along with a Time Gazer. In testing, I found that a lot of my combos tended to be 1 card short, and it really did miss Chronograph, so I decided to slap it back in. I no longer run the Mythical Beast though, due to both space issues and just Electromite also being limited. So but overall I still feel like Chronograph along with Time Gazer gets the job done. It's one of the better engines you could be running. Then for some of the other cards, some of the primary playmakers of the deck, we have Destrudo and Mirror, one of each. Destrudo is obviously amazing because most of your plays are built on the level 7 Synchro side of the deck. Be able to make those with 1 card is really, really good. And it also brings out your Mirror. Now, Mirror is an interesting card because it can only be special summoned by the effect of a worm monster. So if it's in your hand, there's literally nothing you can do with it but tribute summon it, hence why it is a Garnet. However, when you do special summon it, it can pop out 3 tokens and cut its level down. So it'll be level, by the time it's cut its level down, it'll be it'll be down to level 4, I believe, and it can do that 3 times per turn. So you have 4 tokens for free, which means you can use those tokens to make your link plays, such as your Griffin, which is really, really good. And with this build, I actually have a way to proc it turn 1. For some of the hand traps, I do have 3 Ash Blossoms and 3 Gammas, along with Driver. I really like Gamma in Zefra because while it's not the best card, you have so many cards that have spell cards that, can be baited, can bait hand traps between all of your field spells, terraforming, maybe not set rotation, but you kind of get the idea. Zefroth and Pendulum Zone, these are cards that are going to be answered by things like Ash Blossom and Ghost Ogre, and that's where Gamma comes in. It is a really good card for that. It puts 2 materials on the board. We all know how good Ash Blossom is, but if you kind of are on a budget, you can definitely replace these with Effect Veilers. I did in my Nationals build, and it really didn't miss the Ashes too much. But she is the best hand trap currently in the game, so it's one of the reasons I like having her in here. Then the one Ibli, she's here, so Ibli actually gives you a way to proc your Yazi going first, which is really, really good. Having a way to proc that going first, it just helps this deck so much, and that's one of the reasons she's in here. But she's a card you can definitely side out when you're going second, because that's the only reason she's in here, is when you go first, it gives you a way to make a play. With that, it gives you a way to pop off Yazi going first, which obviously if you're going second, your opponent's going to have a card to pop. So it's one of the reasons that's why she's in here. Then for the field spell engine, we have 3 Oracles, the 1 Ravine, the 1 Set Rotation, and the 2 Terraformings. It's pretty self-explanatory. Ravine gives you another way to put your Destrudo in the grave. Can get cards out of your hand like Dark Worm. So if you open Dark Worm, we all know how good Ravine into Dark Worm is. And the other thing, Set Rotation, however, is a nice card because it gives you, not only is it another way to search a field spell, but in certain situations, if you're playing a deck that is very field spell reliant, Oracle cannot be activated unless Oracle can't be activated unless you have a Zefra card in your deck, so you can again put your opponent under a Set Rotation lock, which is really good. The other thing is that Cyclone can pop set cards, so if you are under Set Rotation and need to activate another field spell, you have a way to do it, which is really good. And that's the main thing I really like about it. Also good against things like Evenly Matched. Give your opponent a field spell that can't activate evenly. And it can also be good against Burning Abyss as well. Terraforming, this is kind of just rounding out your consistency. All 3 of these cards can essentially get any of these cards out of your deck, and that's really, really nice. Then 3 copies of Zefra Providence. I don't see why you wouldn't play 3. This basically says search any Zefra card from your deck, including the spells and traps, so just fantastic. On top of that, it has a graveyard protection effect, which is really good. It can't be activated the same turn it ends up in the grave, but that usually doesn't matter. That protection is pretty damn good for this deck. For the other spells, I have the 1 Foolish Burial and the 2 Dragon Shrines. Yeah, you only have 2 targets, but Destrudo puts itself back in the bottom of the deck, which is fine. So that's the main, and you just want to have ways to get them out of your deck as quickly as possible. Then 2 Call by the Graves. like with most of my decks, Call by the Grave, I still feel like it's in a really good spot right now. There's so many things it does hit. It's really good against hitting Sky Striker Ace Ray out of the grave. Obviously it hits hand traps, but the other thing it hits is things like it also hits some of the Thunder Dragon monsters in the graveyard. If they try to activate Avian targeting something in the grave, you can actually chain this to stop the Avian's effect from resolving, so that's pretty damn good. So it also has use against one of the better one of the other decks it's running around right now, which is Thunder Dragon. So I feel like it's a pretty good little card to have. It's useful both going first and going second, so I really like having it. Then for the traps, of course, the one Zefra War, I have rotated this back in because it has come up a lot. There's a lot of boss monsters like Mechaba, for example, because Mech Invoked, is a thing you have to run into. So being able to search out War, drop it, and get the monsters out of the way is pretty damn nice. Bare minimum, you can bait out things, which is perfect. Then for the counter traps, Strike and 9 Pillars. They're having both is pretty damn nice, and obviously, Pillars being able to shuffle things back means it can get rid of things that are immune to destruction, for example, and Divine Strike is pretty darn nice. So that's one of the reasons I really do like having it in here. Then for the extra deck, I have the 1 copy of Electromite. Again, it is at 1, but Zefra's a deck that doesn't necessarily need multiple Electromite for basic deck function. You have Zefra that kind of does the same thing. That being said, it's an important combo piece, but it's not something you 100% need for the deck. But again, it's so damn good that you basically have to have it in there. Then the 1 Link Spider, this combos well with the Mare tokens, because obviously tokens are normal monsters, but also with Driver, because some of the monsters you do play in your extra deck, like Decode Talker, require effect monsters, and obviously your Nightmares require monsters with different names, so having Link Spider to link off and then be able to extend from there is pretty darn nice. Mermaid is there for the Ibli combo going first. If you do feel like you want something else in this spot, when you do go second, you could side it as well, because again, it's not something you need all the time going first. But I also do find that it does come up when I need to Phoenix something away and turn it into a Mermaid, so I have zones to summon in. It does come up, so I do like having it in there just for that purpose. Then Phoenix is also here because during the Mare combo, one of the things I usually do is I make Link Spider, then Phoenix underneath it to clear back row, and then into Griffin. It's a pretty standard combo string, so Phoenix is there. I feel like it's the better one than Cerberus right now with all the back row running around, especially. The 1 copy of Nightmare Griffin. This is actually one of the standout cards in the deck I've found in testing. So Nightmare Griffin has 2 powerful effects that help this deck. 1, it can reset spells and traps from your grave, so you can actually reuse your counter traps after resolving them. I cannot stress how good that is. It's comes up so much in testing, and on top of that, it also cuts off special summon effects from monster special summon effects when they're not coding. Now, granted, this isn't going to do a lot against Sky Striker because they will typically drop a afterburnering. It's easy for some of the top tier decks to get rid of. That's why, but the fact that it can reset its own protection is pretty damn nice, and it can be good against a lot of decks that aren't necessarily rogue or more roguish. Griffin does put us, especially because during the combo you typically have it in the main monster zone anyways, so I do like having it in there. Lamphalinkus actually comes up during the Mermaid Ibli combo because you need a link off. Because typically during the combo, you need to turn Mermaid into an Ibli and put them both in the grave. So you can put Ibli on your opponent's side of the board. You do need Lamphalinkus for the combo. Decode Talker is pretty damn important, I've found in testing. Zefra, this deck really struggles to get over anything over a certain attack value, and that's where Decode Talker comes in. You really need it for that reason. Alternatively, you could play one of the Boral Dragons as well if you do have them, like Boral Sword, but I find Decode just is a little bit easier for this deck to climb into, and it can take advantage of a lot of those effects. Then Metaltron, it is a Zefra monster, but it comes up a ton, especially with the Vortex combo, and the fact that it's protected by Providence is pretty darn nice. Then for the Synchro, Starter's Charge is still pretty darn good. There are a few decks still running around that play Scapegoat, so that's where Charge Warrior can come up. It also combos well with the Field Spell. You can search out any hand trap. Same thing applies for Electromite. What you'll do is you'll stack with the Field Spell here, you'll stack, whenever you Synchro Summon using the Zefra, you'll stack any monster on top of the deck. Then you'll use Electromite or Stardust Charge's draw effect to search that same monster. So that's pretty darn nice, and it's a really good card to have in here. Then for the level 7s, I have the 1 Yazi and the 1 Black Rose and the 1 Meteor Burst. Yazi is obviously amazing for being able to tag Mirror out of the deck. However, its ability not to be targeted can be pretty sticky for Sky Strikers to deal with to an extent. So if you have a relevant matchup where they can't really get over this, then that's where this comes in. Sky Striker is going to have to make some really awkward plays to get rid of this. So if you have this in protection, it's going to be very difficult for them to deal with. Black Rose being able to make this going second with 1 card and completely nuke the board is really darn nice. Combos really well with Providence because you can use the protection to protect your Zefra cards from being destroyed, and then you'll still have your Zefra Tath and your Scales intact to OTK them. Meteor Burst is pretty damn good, obviously, for bringing out Absolute and Vortex, but its battle phase effect is actually pretty relevant against things like Sky Striker, with Ray being a thing. Also being able to cut off, for people still playing Burning Abyss, it's also pretty relevant because you can cut off those grave effects, which is pretty darn nice. I still have Choufeng in here. Goki's a little bit more relevant for me in America, and although people are more leaning towards the Dark Goki build now, so it doesn't cut off as much, but still being able to cut off those rematch searches is pretty darn nice, and when you do, it does get destroyed, usually with pillars after negating something. You can search out another hand trap, which is really, really good. And then I still have the Absolute and Vortex package in here, but I'm honest, it's something I'm kind of debating, but I'm going to be honest, like, the extra deck isn't super, clogged for room, so I feel like it's still in here. It's still a play I make fairly often enough to justify playing it. I really do like having it in there. So anyway, guys, it about comes the end of the Zefra deck profile. I hope you guys did enjoy this updated list. It is a really fun deck, not something that, is super hyper competitive. It's definitely not going to compete with some of the big boys, but it is a pretty solid deck in its own. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. And as always, thank you guys for watching. So, Orstorm, signing out.